welcome to the deep dive. You've sent us a really fascinating collection of sources, news articles, a YouTube transcript, all focusing on the Thai senator selection.
That's right. The Sawat Chukong, or SW situation, is complex.
Exactly. So our mission today is to cut through all that complexity, the political moves, the legal questions, and figure out what's really going on, what's significant, and, what might happen next.
We'll be looking at the Election Commission, the GGT, the DSI, which is the Department of Special Investigation, the Constitutional Court.
And statements for the people actually involved. Okay, so let's dive in. Where's the best place to start unpacking this?
Well, I think the most striking thing right now, the thing making headlines, is the Constitutional Court's intervention regarding the Justice Minister, Tawi Sadsong. That seems like the most revealing starting point.
Agreed. That definitely caught my eye. The court ordering Tawi to step back from overseeing the DSI.
Yeah, and it wasn't out of the blue.
No, it followed that petition, right? From 92 senators. They were arguing that Minister Tawi and also Deputy Prime Minister Famthumui Kayachai were, well, improperly involved in the DSI's investigation.
Involved in the investigation into alleged problems with their own selection process.
Right. And the court initially accepted the petition, but crucially didn't suspend them at first.
Exactly. That's key. They accepted it, but let them carry on. Then something changed.
It did. Between May 7th and 14th, those senators submitted more evidence. We don't know the exact details of what they submitted.
But whatever it was enough for the court to, well, reverse its initial stance. They suspended Tawi.
And this is the really unusual part, only from overseeing the DSI, not his whole job as Justice Minister.
And this is where it gets particularly interesting for you. It's not a blanket suspension. The commentators in the YouTube video we looked at called it strange, even unprecedented.
Yeah, I mean, telling a minister they can't supervise one specific department, the DSI in this case, while doing everything else, it's peculiar.
Very specific. The court cited Article 82, Paragraph 2 of the Constitutional Court Act.
Okay, and that article essentially lets the court suspend high-ranking officials if there are accusations of wrongdoing while the case is considered.
Precisely. It's a powerful tool, but using it in this targeted way against Tawi, it raises big questions, especially for that ongoing investigation into Haw Suo.
Right, the Haw Suo. For anyone unfamiliar, that's the term for the alleged collusion, maybe prearrangements, in how these senators were selected.
So Tawi, as Justice Minister, directly supervised the DSI. Taking him out of that specific role definitely complicates that DSI investigation. It's a disruption, no doubt.
And it's really telling that Phumthum, the deputy PM, also named in the petition,
who chairs the special case committee overseeing this very DSI work.
He wasn't suspended. So the court seems to be zeroing in on Tawi's direct, maybe day-to-day, control over the DSI for this specific case.
That seems to be the logic, yes. Targeting the most immediate influence. Now, the YouTube analysis offered kind of opposing ways to look at this court action.
Okay, like what?
Well, one view is that it's judicial overreach. The court stepping into the executive branch's business, basically. Interfering where it maybe shouldn't.
Right, exceeding its authority. What's the flip side? The more positive interpretation.
The alternative view is that the court is actually acting as a check, preventing potential executive interference, Tawi's influence in the work of another body, the Election Commission, the GGT.
Because the GGT is also looking into these same selection irregularities.
Exactly. So this view sees the court maybe signaling to the DSI, hey, maybe pause or rethink some of your actions, like those reports of notices being posted at senators' homes.
That makes sense. And the Prime Minister's reaction seemed quite cautious, didn't it? Measured.
Very much so, which really highlights how much weight the Constitutional Court carries here.
Yeah.
The executive branch seems to be treading carefully.
So connecting back, this Haw Suo investigation is really at the heart of it all, this alleged collusion.
Absolutely central. And it's important for you to understand how the GGT and the DSI are dividing up the work here.
Okay, so the GGT, the Election Commission, they're looking at the process itself. Did the selection follow the rules in the act on the acquisition of senators?
That's their main focus, yes. The legality, the procedures, were things done properly according to that specific law.
And the DSI?
The DSI has labeled it a special case. They got approval for that back in March. They're looking at potential criminal offenses tied to the alleged collusion. Things like money laundering and ANGI activity.
ANGI. What's that translate to?
It means something like a secret society or organized crime. So DSI is looking at potential financial crimes and organized efforts behind the scenes.
And they're focusing on 3 groups, reportedly.
That's right. First, the decision makers, political figures, apparently from one party. Second, the planners and organizers, maybe younger party members, IT people, even mathematicians involved in the structuring.
Wow, mathematicians. Okay. And the third group?
The executive committee of this supposed Anyi network, influential figures in the party and related groups linked, they claim, by financial data communications. It sounds quite structured.
It really does. And their evidence comes from, what, 5 main sources?
Yes. Witness statements, digital evidence, site inspections, documents about the Haw Suo itself, and information from people involved. Some names apparently came from that leaked list of 1,200 people.
And now the GGT, the Election Commission, they're under pressure too, aren't they?
Oh, definitely. Public interest is high. If they look like they're dragging their feet, they could face accusations themselves. Dereliction of duty under Article 157 of the Criminal Code. So they have their own reasons to act.
Which brings us to the wider political context.
Yeah.
The sources keep mentioning red and blue factions.
Yeah, that's common shorthand in Thailand. It's not always about specific parties, more like broad political alignments or power blocks that have existed for a while.
Got it. So general tendencies. And there was talk in the YouTube video of a meeting between a big boss from the red side and a master teacher from the blue side.
Yes, though the red side apparently insists it wasn't any kind of negotiation or concession, just a meeting.
Interesting. And there's this analysis from Thanaporn Sriakul, teacher Jha, about the red faction strategy towards the senators.
Right. According to him, the idea is to weaken the blue faction, target the really core deep blue senators with these legal cases. The phrase used was like showing the monkey a bloody chicken, basically. Make an example to scare others.
An intimidation tactic.
Yeah.
And also pressure other blue senators to flip their allegiance.
Yeah.
Move towards the red side.
That seems to be the strategy outlined. Teacher Jha even broke down the blue senators into 3 circles.
Okay, what are they?
First, the inner circle. The deep blue, sometimes called Jack's group. These are supposedly very influential former high-ranking officials. They control votes, committee positions, even the vetting for independent bodies. Maybe about 30 people.
A powerful core group, then.
The second circle is influential figures in the blue camp out in the provinces. And the third circle they called Nokle.
Which means?
Sort of like sacrificial lambs, people who maybe got in unexpectedly or are just expected to vote how they're told by the inner circle.
So it's not just legal pressure. There are other moves being made.
Apparently so. The example given was the MotoGP contract not being renewed. That was reportedly a key money source for the Burium faction, which is associated with the blue side. So hitting them financially too, perhaps.
It shows how high the stakes are. And these senators, they have real power, don't they? Appointing members to independent organizations.
A huge amount of power. They appoint 46 members to various independent bodies during their term. That makes the Senate critical, a potential last bastion, as the sources put it, for conservative forces.
Meaning they could block things like constitutional changes or other agendas from different political groups.
Exactly. They hold significant sway over the institutional landscape. So this fight isn't just about individuals, it's about controlling that influence.
Which explains the strong reactions and counter-arguments we're seeing.
Absolutely. Senator Alongkorn Ponlabut, for instance. He's questioned the timing of the DSI investigation. Why now, he asks, right after senators walked out on constitutional amendment talks?
Suggesting that DSI is being used politically.
That's his implication. He even mentioned a historical pattern going back to Thaksin Shinawatра's time and pointed out the close link between the current Justice Minister, Tawi, and the DSI head.
And he raised legal questions, too, about who can actually prosecute senators. Can DSI do it directly, or does it have to go through the GDT or the Anti-Corruption Commission, the PPC, or the Supreme Court's political division?
Good questions. It highlights the procedural complexities. And speaking of the PTC, that anti-corruption body,
Yes.
a group of 81 senators actually filed a complaint with the PPC against Minister Tawi and the DSI Director General.
Accusing them of malfeasance for taking on the Haw Suo case as a special case involving money laundering.
Exactly, under Article 157. And the PPC has accepted that complaint for a preliminary investigation. So now the investigators are themselves being investigated in a way.
Wow. It really is multi-layered. And there was that perspective from the Pantip Forum, too.
Yeah, comparing the situation to how the People's Party apparently acts quickly against internal wrongdoing. The point being made was a perceived contrast with the GGT's pace regarding these senator allegations. Kind of a why the delay question.
So if Tawi is sidelined from overseeing DSI, who might step in? The YouTube discussion mentioned possibilities.
They did. Deputy PM Thumthum was one name. He already oversees the Justice Ministry broadly and chairs the DSI board. Chusak Sirinol was another, a minister with a legal background.
But the feeling was whoever takes over will be under pressure not to interfere too much with the senators.
That seemed to be the consensus. Avoid looking heavy-handed. Meanwhile, the GGT has its own subcommittee, Committee 26, still working on this. They have a 90-day time frame, potentially extendable.
So the GGT process is ongoing, just maybe less publicly dramatic than the DSI's moves in the court order?
Right. It involves internal reviews before it even gets to the main GGT commission. And we're hearing conflicting things from senators about money trails, too. Some say evidence exists, others deny everything. The difference between a promise to give and actual money-changing hands seems key.
And these new SW? Newer senators, maybe. They've been quite vocal.
Very. They seem to see the court order against Tawi as validating their worries about political interference. One reportedly reacted quite strongly, accusing Tawi of harming the Senate.
And indicated they might not cooperate fully with the GGT subcommittee, but would talk to the main commission.
Yes, suggesting some internal tensions and maybe distrust even within the Senate ranks.
It really does sound like that boxing match analogy from the YouTube video. Tit-for-tat moves between factions.
And the Constitutional Court's intervention was like a significant punch, forcing one side, Tawi's side perhaps, to step back, at least temporarily.
Okay, so wrapping this deep dive up, it's clear this is incredibly complex. Legal processes, intense politics, all tangled together.
Definitely. The key things for you, the listener, to take away are probably that unusual partial suspension of the Justice Minister, the fact that both the GGT and DSI are investigating this simultaneously but differently, and the huge power dynamics playing out.
Between factions, between institutions like the court, the DSI, the GGT, the Senate itself.
Exactly. And here's something to think about as this continues. These legal processes can take a long time. Given that and all the political maneuvering we've discussed, what's the real long-term impact going to be?
On the Senate's makeup, its influence, and maybe even on Thailand's wider political direction.
Right. And what role will public opinion play as more details emerge or don't emerge? It's definitely a situation to keep watching. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.